Hi, everyone. This is Craig Zelzer from PCDN Global. We're back for episode 12 of season 11 of the Social Change Career Podcast. We're here with Lorraine Charles today, and we're going to be talking about remote work for refugees, changing lives and livelihoods, both on her career path working at this intersection and also opportunities for people who've been displaced in this area. For people who have not joined the Social Change Career Podcast previously, this episode usually goes about an hour. It's live stream, and we really enjoy hearing from people watching, particularly on LinkedIn. So anytime throughout the podcast, please feel free to put in the chat box where you're watching from, your questions, and also a sentence or two about your work, because it really, it makes it much more engaging. And then throughout the podcast, feel free to add questions, comments, favorite resources. And then by Friday, this should be up as an evergreen episode of the Social Change Career Podcast, of one of almost 120 episodes featuring brilliant innovators and change makers from around the world, sharing honest insights on the good and the bad and the challenges of building a career of impact. 3 quick things before we get started. If you like the podcast, please consider sharing and rating it, and also checking out the other episodes. Please follow Lorraine and Naamal on LinkedIn and their channels. Please follow PCDN, and that's about it. So I will summarize Lorraine's bio, and then we'll jump right in. And again, please let us know where you're watching from. And so Lorraine is a social entrepreneur and researcher, co-founder and executive director at Naamal. She holds a significant role with FinChurch Aid and the International Labour Organization as a research associate at the University of Cambridge. She's known for expertise in linking forcibly displaced individuals with remote work opportunities, and is a member of various advisory committees focused on digital solutions and livelihood programs. That is a very short bio. So obviously Lorraine is involved in many, many, many different capacities. So let me just welcome a few people who are here. Welcome Wilson from Cameroon, welcome Tonya from Cameroon. And Lorraine, as we get started, can you share, in terms of thinking about the focus of your career to date, what would you say are the things that have linked together your professional and academic experiences?
So that's actually a good question, and often where I begin. Naamal was born from my research. I was doing research on education for refugees in the Middle East, looking at the private sector and their engagement with refugees. And then I became interested in what happens post K-12 education. And I did some research on livelihoods for refugees in Jordan, Turkey, and then later Lebanon, because I wanted to understand what happens beyond K-12 education, because the funding decreases quite significantly the older refugees get. So I really wanted to understand what the situation was, what refugees were doing, and how they were coping. And this was in 2016, earliest days of the Syrian crisis, when lots of attention was on Syria. So that hence my research being in the Middle East. And I was living in, and I live in the Middle East. So lived in the Middle East, both at the same time. And this is where I saw the gaps. And one of the first gaps that I saw was there was a really big focus on just technical skills, but no soft skills. That's one gap. And the other gap that I saw was that they had a very traditional view of what employment looked like. They saw employment as being educated and working within the host community. And this is why remote work became so powerful, because in the countries that I was doing research on, refugees had limited access to employment in these countries. So remote work sort of served as a gray area, as a loophole toward employment. I actually have a paper about the remote work loophole in Jordan. So we saw remote work as a way to navigate the existing the barriers that refugees faced in finding employment where they are. So initially, the idea was just to do research. I didn't plan to be a social entrepreneur to start an organization. And then I met a lady who was working in this space, and she thought, no, we have to do something because no one else is doing it. And this is why I sort of formed Naamal, because there was no one doing it. And the more research I did, the more I realized there was no one really existing in the space. So hence, Naamal was born out of my research, looking at the challenges and the barriers that refugees face in the Middle East, and then finding the gaps as you do as a researcher, but actually creating an intervention to address the gaps that I saw, because there was no one else doing it. Oh. Oh my goodness. I think we've lost Craig. So maybe I'll talk about the current work that we're doing until Craig gets back. And I think I can see questions if they're in the comments.
Apologies. Somehow the internet cut off, so I have no idea why. We'll edit this out in the podcast. So you can hear me okay?
Yeah,
apologies
I can
to
hear
all
you.
our listeners. Again, we'll edit this out of the final version. So you were talking about doing research, particularly in Jordan, and how remote work kind of often displaced populations and refugees have very limited work opportunities in host countries. And that remote work was kind of this, let's say, there was a loophole, I think is the word you used. Before we get much more into that, can you talk a little bit, like, was this research for master's, a DPhil? Like, what is your, how long you've been living in the Middle East? Do you speak Arabic? And kind of like, how did you get to that point of doing that research?
So I initially went to the Middle East in 2004, a very long time ago, because I was interested in the Middle East. I always have. I was living in Taiwan before that. And I started to do some research around migration in general. This is obviously before the Syrian crisis happened. And then initially lived in Oman and then Abu Dhabi. And when I moved to Abu Dhabi, I was working as an education advisor, looking at, how to support the education transformation in the local schools in the UAE. And again, doing more research on migration in general in the Gulf. And then the Syrian crisis happened when I was there, and I sort of saw all these things unfolding. And I traveled to the region, to Jordan, to Lebanon, to Turkey, and Syria was my favorite country. And then when I started, a couple of years into the Arab Spring, I started working at a university, and one of my colleagues asked me to do some research on the Arab Spring and women, choose any country. And I chose Syria because I've been to Syria and I loved Syria. So hence writing about Syria. This was before things became really problematic in Syria. Well, things are always problematic, but this is before Syrians started arriving on the shores of Europe. So, for Europe, up until that point, it wasn't a refugee crisis for Europe. And yeah, so I was writing about the Arab Spring and women before 2016, and was fascinated by the whole Syrian context. And then I stopped working at the university, and I got a job working for an organization, an international nonprofit that looked at education for refugees. And this is where I sort of became interested in, this is where I sort of used my K-12 experience, in education as education advisor, my research experience. And this is sort of where, which led me to, to understand, led me to be curious about livelihoods, because I was doing research on the region anyway. And this is why I became curious. So I'm still sort of back and forth between Scotland, where my kids are at school, and the Middle East. But I lived in the Middle East for 18 years altogether, 18 years. And my Arabic is shway, it's okay. And I guess this is perhaps why I became interested in doing stuff with refugees, because I lived in the Middle East. And even though where I lived, there wasn't the huge crises as there were in the Levant. I was, I wanted to understand more. I had lots of friends who were Syrian, so I really wanted to understand the context that led to what happened. And then with my education, I wanted to understand more about the education context. So that's really what brought me full circle to be doing work on education, refugees, and then livelihoods.
Thank you so much. And apologies for the tech challenges. I just checked my internet connection. Usually this almost never happens, and my connection's good, so not sure what, I have 300 megabytes. Anyway, we'll keep going. So a couple of questions here. So if you think about pivoting from research to applied practice, what skills did you find most useful in making that change? And for people who are thinking about they might want to work at the intersection of displacement and employment or income generation opportunities, what skills do you think are the most useful for people who might want to work either, for places like Tent Partnership for Refugees or IRC, or organizations on the front lines of, what are the skills and career trends that you're seeing?
So I'm not sure if I'm the best person to ask, because my career has been very unconventional. Because I mean, I wasn't sure whether I had the skills, to do this. Yes, I had the theoretical background doing research, and all of the work that NAML does is research driven. We want to understand why. We want to understand what everyone else is doing, and we want to then learn from what exists to create something which addresses a need that no one else fills, but also addresses a need in a way that's linked to best practice. And best practice for us often doesn't come from the nonprofit sector. For us, best practices, certainly in the space that we're working, best practice really, it looks at what are the best schools doing, what are the best education programs doing that lead to the best outcomes. And when we built the program for NAML, I said, I want to build something that I would be happy if my children do. So so for me, building something that's really top quality, even though it's perhaps it is more expensive, for the donor compared to other programs. I want something that's going to be really good, that's actually going to make a difference, and not something that's sort of, less expensive. And this is one of the initial criticisms I got: the cost per learner is too high. And I say, well, you don't see that when you send your child to an expensive private school. When certainly Americans, when you pay thousands and hundreds of thousands to send your children to these top universities, we don't talk about cost per learner there, but for refugee populations, we have this metric suddenly becomes important. So I wanted to build something that was really, really good, and but also something that that changes with the need. So so I think in terms of what skills you need, resilience. Just don't take no for an answer, because so many times when I first started NAML, especially because of the idea emerged before COVID, not viable, not possible, not scalable. Remote work, never going to work, never going to happen. Of course, COVID changed that. So for me, resilience was really, really important, because I really never took no for an answer. I knocked on every door, because I really believe that this was the future of work. And then COVID helped us. But also, building something which people respect is, and which is really, really good quality. So I don't think I answered the question, what skills you need to go into the nonprofit sector, because I'm not sure whether there's a specific, you don't have to study a specific thing. It helps understanding history, understanding politics, helps knowing these things. But also, I think what's important is, do you have the leadership skills? Do you have the communication skills? And can you navigate complex situations? And I think that's what maybe helped me grow NAML, because before NAML, I never had a job with a big agency before NAML, or I never had a job with a big, I did work for international nonprofit, but sort of doing research, not implementation like this.
Okay. Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone. We have a lot of people joining us from West Africa. Feel free to keep letting us know where you're watching from. Welcome, Judith, from DRC, actually East Africa. And I think I finally worked out all the tech challenges. So can you share with other people what does NAML mean, and a little bit about, since you launched, like the scope of your impact, or how many people you've helped generate employment, or what some of the metrics that you share with others about what has been done to date and what the potential is of where you can go? Yeah, so the word NAML, it's an Arabic word, and it means we hope, but amal also means, we work. The idea was NAML, working. NAML means we work, but amal also means hope. So the word amal, it's spelled differently in Arabic, hope and work. Our initial meaning was work, but we like the fact that it also means hope. We hope, we work. So for us, it's very special, because we really believe that work brings hope and resilience and all of these things. So for me, livelihoods come first. And what have we done so far? So we started really small, because when we started in 2020, even though we registered before, and the idea was the idea was there before, and I had lots of conversations, but no one really was interested before COVID. We started really small. In the first year, we only worked with 20 people in year one.
year 2, we worked with 70. 2020, 2021, 2022, we worked with 130. This year, we're 100 this year. So the numbers aren't great, not massive numbers, because we believe in sort of small cohorts where we can have, direct hands-on support with all of the learners. So each of our learners gets a mentor, and that's something, a shout out to anyone who wants to be a mentor, guiding refugees with the skills to work remotely. We like mentors who sort of achieved a particular level in their career, who can help refugees get the networks to be where they need to be. So our employment rate is 70%, and 50% of those work remotely. So whilst the goal is remote work, we understand that not everyone wants to work remotely, but ensuring that they have the skills, and the skills are transferable between remote work and sort of more conventional face-to-face work. So this year we work in Ethiopia and in Kenya. Next year, we have a big new research project which is happening, funded by the World Bank. Oh my goodness, Caroline is here. Wow, I'm so proud that she's here. So the ILO is one of our big partners in Kenya. And next year, apart from the World Bank project, we're just sort of figuring out where we go next. But the idea is to sort of do more, to train more people, and to really link them to work, because that's the bit which we're working on now. We have a couple of great partners that we're really sort of working on, to provide work. And we have, right now, we're at the stage where we have all these projects. We're thinking, right now we have to navigate the teams to get everything sorted, to get them links to work. So really, huge potential, but, partnerships are what we believe in.
So can you share in terms of, so 70% kind of employment rate is pretty high. So can you share, do you have data in terms of average income, or, because are the people making a living wage? Are they getting paid based on the local regional economy? Or are they working for international organizations and getting paid? Like in terms of actually the data, so is it a living wage, and how many, if someone is part of a family, are they able to support multiple people? And then a little bit more like, what type of jobs are they getting? So is it social media? Is it coding? Like, what are you helping? Like if you're in Ethiopia and Kenya and expanding beyond, like how are you deciding what type of training is needed?
Right.
Because there's a lot of workforce training programs, and obviously the number one rule is find out what the economy needs. Because if you're training people, I mean, upskilling is always great, but like if you're helping people get to where the jobs are going to be versus where they were. So a little bit more like salary levels, what sectors are they working in, and how do you determine that?
Well, I mean, we haven't done, because we did our first program in 2020, the Middle East, and the Middle East is complicated because of the restrictions around refugees working. So we actually want to do a tracer study next year. We've done some vague tracer studies about income, but it's really hard because a couple of our programs had global cohorts. And so apart from this year, 2 programs in the Middle East, Jordan and Lebanon. Lebanon is really complicated because even Lebanese is struggling in Lebanon to work. So Lebanon is really difficult, to quantify. Jordan, again, because of the restrictions. So this is where it gets complicated. Our other programs, we did two programs at MIT, and that's a global cohort, refugees from all over the world. And so sometimes in a way it's unfair to compare that program with the other country-specific programs, because with the MIT label, you get the best, and because we're recruiting globally. So in that particular program, we have people who went to Meta, who went to Black & Decker, who went to really top companies. But that's a really special program, and we'll be working with them again next year. With our programs in Jordan, so for example, there's someone in the refugee camp in Jordan, Zaatari, who's working for a tech company. There are a couple of people doing that, but it's really complicated in those contexts because of the restrictions placed on refugees. Right now, our 2 programs in Kenya and Ethiopia. In Ethiopia, they're trying to be full stack web developers. We know coding is really important, and we don't see it as you doing coding, you have to be a full stack web developer. There's so much that can be done with those skills. It's just a skill that you have that can help you navigate the next phase. We always talk about continuing education, sort of, this whole idea of lifelong learning. We really instill that in our learners, so they understand. Yeah, we might have done development, but we're also interested in how do we move to the next step and the next step? And, and through the work that we're doing now, linking them to work, we're giving them lots of different experiences so they can really figure out, okay, is this really what I want? Do I want to work in this? Our program in Kenya is slightly different because we recruited people who've been through training programs in the past. We have a quite variety of skills from software development to graphic design, UX, UI, social media marketing. So quite a variety of skills in that program. And certainly when we are working through one of our partners, we work with a new partner called Equal Reach, and sort of getting outsourced projects from companies. So for example, if you, Craig, you want a tech product built or a tech program developed, you'd come to us and say, right, this is my brief. I want refugees to work on it. So we take your brief and we sort of, and we'd have a team of refugees working on it. So that's the model we're building now. And right now we're sort of determining, everything has to be not just the minimum wage, a good wage, and a wage that feels comfortable in these countries. And especially if we consider in Kenya, the cost of living is pretty low. Even when I was in Kenya, I'm like, wow, I hardly spent any money here in like 10 days. So the cost of living is low, but we want to make sure that they have enough to really live a decent life. So it's not just, can I earn money? Can I, how can I not just survive, but thrive? And this is what we're really, aiming for. So when we're setting the fees, because they aren't employed by us, everyone's going to work on a sort of, freelance basis, so they can work with us or they can work with someone else. We want to make sure that everyone's earning enough to thrive. And that's our goal. So, we found a way to get laptops for a lot of the learners, because laptops was a huge problem. My team were tearing their hair out thinking, oh my goodness, we have no laptops. We got a couple of partners that donated laptops. So now we kind of have more laptops than we need for this particular cohort. So really looking at all of the challenges that they face to help them be successful as quickly as they can. In terms of the skills, we know tech skills are what's required. AI is something which is changing the nature of work really quickly. And I do research for the ILO about the future of work. I wrote a report last year, I think it was, about digitalization and employment, looking at what are the emerging trends. And we always keep an eye on the skills which are emerging. But sometimes it's really hard because it changes so quickly. Sometimes content doesn't quite often align with the way things are changing. And I think, no one will forget November 2022, when we first heard about ChatGPT. That really changed the way we thought about a lot of content creation. So I think, whilst we know that the AI revolution is there, and part of our work is working on generative AI microtasks as a sort of way to have a small continuous income whilst you're either looking for other jobs or doing other jobs, trying to find ways to to get our learners understanding that, yes, we give you this training, but you need to also look, because there's a lot of free courses out there. So we sort of create a catalog of resources, which they can link to. But really the NAMLS program focuses on these non-technical skills, these sort of soft skills, because this is one thing that we know that organizations don't do well with. And these are things that we know companies really find important. Yes, it's one thing to be a great coder, but if you can't communicate, if you can't manage your time, if you don't have critical thinking, then it's really hard to work with a team. So we're really focusing on helping our learners with these human skills, non-technical skills, essential skills, soft skills, whatever they're called.
So there's a saying, I still don't know whoever said this, but talent is universally distributed, opportunity isn't. And there's been increasing emphasis in the humanitarian sector, particularly humanitarian aid, in terms of cash transfers. So maybe it's 6 or 7% of all humanitarian aid is now direct cash transfers. And there's a lot of money spent on workforce development in all different sectors. And do you see among the money that goes to displaced populations, is there increasing emphasis? I mean, obviously everybody needs shelter, food, security first, wherever they're located. But do you see increasing emphasis on actually helping people get remote jobs, or is this kind of a very small segment? And who do you see as your, I won't say competitors, but your partners? Is there, because there's the There's a Cash Alliance Learning Partnership, the CALP network, which is great for anybody who wants to understand the cash transfer, the pros and the cons. So is there an equivalent? There's the Job Tech Alliance,
Yes.
Mercy Corps, but is there like a global association of organizations that are either funding or working in this area, or is it emerging?
I mean, there are a lot of us working in this space, and I speak to Job Tech Alliance a lot. I mean, one thing that this space misses is a sort of community and that is being worked on, of shared practice, because so many times I hear from organizations, oh, we want to build a digital livelihoods program, this is what we're doing. And I think, oh my God, that doesn't work. We've tried it doesn't work. So there is no space because it's so new. There is no research and very little written evidence about what works and what doesn't. So until we get a lot more evidence, and and it is coming, I'm working on a report now talking about that. We need this shared space, this community of practice, to really share what's going on, what works and what doesn't, and recognizing that what works in one context may not work in another, definitely, but also something, a thing like devices, and I want to say, if you have no devices, a digital livelihood program, how is it going to work? There was a discussion about shared devices. We were not, I will not hire someone who I know is working on a shared device. Why should we expect a company to hire someone working on a shared device, especially now with data, with data security and all of these risks? So many of these, so many of these things are sort of common practice across places, and so yes, there are lots of emerging actors who we partner with, and I don't want to say we compete, we want to partner, because that's the only way. This space is big and it's growing, but it's still quite niche, because we have to make sure that people have the skills. And right now, there are a lot of barriers which prevent refugees from actively engaging. So not only is there skills, there's infrastructure, there's ID, how can people get paid? Is the connectivity good enough? There's a lot of barriers which sort of make it difficult, but these barriers are slowly being overcome, and definitely with partnerships, this is how we make it work. So I have really high hopes for our program in Kenya, because we're sort of looking at all of these barriers and thinking, okay, how can we address these to make sure that our learners have the best possible chance? And the last mile that we saw where we were challenged was, we initially kept going to employers and saying, well, you want to hire someone as an intern? We're like, no, we don't want to hire an intern. It felt too risky to companies. So I sort of sat back with I have my own mentor, and I thought, how can I de-risk companies? So I spoke to another community, the Running Remote community, which I'm part of, and one member said to me, he says, I don't want to hire one of your team, but I'll be happy to outsource work to your team. So this is when I thought, okay, I have to do this agency model. And unfortunately, this great partner, Equal Reach, and us, we're doing it together. So, so companies are outsourcing work to Equal Reach as an agency, and then teams of refugees from our cohorts will be doing the work. So this way we give our talent the experience, supported by team leads and supported by technical mentors. So not only will they have their soft skills professional mentors, they have the mentors, tech mentors, working with the team leads to help make sure that the quality of the product which they deliver is up to par. And again, this de-risks it for, not only for us as an organization, but also, for our talent. Because if the talent is working in a space with other people, with a team lead, we know the quality of the work that goes to the client is going to be the best quality. Whereas if an individual refugee works, it could be good, but because they may not understand the ecosystem, it could easily not be good. And then this sort of puts the entire, not just our organization, but sort of also the entire space. If someone says, well, I worked with a refugee, the work was rubbish, then we don't do this space any service. So which is why we sort of came up with this model. So they get experience within teams, team leader, we know the quality of the work that goes to the client is the best. And then eventually they can build their experience to understand the type of work that needs to be delivered, but also how to work with teams, how to navigate. So sort of creating this initial sheltered, incubator experience.
So wonderful. So I also just put two resources in. The Tent Partnership for Refugees is doing a lot of work around the world, and the head of Chobani Yogurt's one of the key people. And then the Ready School Digital Integration, Anne was on our podcast many seasons ago, and they're doing a lot to
Yeah,
help
I know that.
refugees and displaced populations in Germany and Denmark and elsewhere upskill
Yeah.
to get jobs at tech companies.
Yeah, so I want to give us, maybe you can challenge Tent, tell those companies to hire refugees remotely, because
Yeah.
they seem to be more interested in hiring refugees in Starbucks as a barista. We have refugees who have the skills, but there's a reticence to hire remotely, and I've been speaking to Tent for years about this.
Okay.
So, and this is the next step that we're struggling to overcome. Companies have the reticence. So, as I said, they don't have to hire individual, outsource work to teams of refugees through us, and then they can achieve. Because, Tent is great, but sometimes I feel it's more PR than action, and I
Right.
want more action.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, getting to some of the data here, I think we're about to hit 130 million displaced this year, or maybe even higher. Obviously, there's a technical or legal difference between internally displaced and refugees and migrants. But if you think about, it sounds like are you exclusively working with refugees, or you're working with displaced populations?
Displaced populations and also host community. So,
Okay.
for example, in Kenya, we work with host community Kenyans and refugees.
So if you think about, let's say, whether it's, UNHCR, other statistics, if it's 100, 130 million, what percentage of refugees or displaced populations actually don't have any income generation? Like among those who are displaced, is it like 1% who have, let's say, or 2% are actually, I mean, they might have farming and other things, but actually have access to paid employment? Is there any data out there showing when
Yeah.
people are displaced, what percentage, once they're at least somewhere safe beyond just like emergency situation, what percentage actually have access to some type of paid employment?
So if you think of, I mean, that's a really tough question, but I think if you sort of look at the patterns of where people come from, and I'm going to take maybe Syria as an example, or even Sudan. In Syria, the people that left first were the ones with networks and with education. And Syria before the crisis, I think 15% of people went to university in Syria before the crisis. They had a pretty good university attainment and almost equal education attainment in terms of gender. So, I mean, obviously, this isn't reflective of a lot of other countries which have, where displacement has happened. But Syria had a good education system before the crisis. And same with Sudan. Sudan is really recent. Things are still evolving. The Sudanese who left Khartoum, a lot, drove to Egypt in their cars. They were quite well off. So a lot of the, so it's really hard to give you a number. But, in a lot of the displacement context, especially the recent ones, which haven't had so much political turmoil before the crisis, then you would find a significant proportion of people with education. So one interesting thing to look at is to look at what was the rate of higher education. It obviously doesn't give everything, because a lot of people without degrees still have quite successful careers, but it gives us a slight indication to what percentage of people within those contexts might have the skills. But also, you don't need to have a degree to do a lot of these jobs. But it's really hard to get an indication of, really hard to get an indication otherwise.
So someone asked the question, I didn't get, I think it's someone from Ethiopia, just want to know which partner organizations are you working with in Ethiopia? And I guess two questions in correlation with that, or in connection. So one is, if someone is working with an organization that is around workforce development for displaced populations, how do they potentially partner with NAMAL? And then if someone, there are going to be people watching this who are displaced or working with communities are displaced, how does someone potentially become a participant in your program?
Okay, so in Ethiopia, we're working with Digital Opportunity Trust, which is a Canadian NGO with lots of branches in different companies. They're our partner in Ethiopia. So the way it works in Ethiopia is they do the technical skills training, we do the soft skills training. And again, this is another reason why we built the program like we did, because we really focus on this soft skills training, which a lot of workforce readiness don't necessarily, do. So that, so they have really good technical skills training, but the soft skills is often sort of implicit. Oh, we work in teams, so we do teamwork. We have, so because we work this way, it makes it really easy to partner with other organizations, because our program can easily slot into that of other organizations. So, really happy to work with anyone who has the same goal as us. And now, because we're building this sort of links to employment, we want to work with other organizations, but we're really careful. We have to ensure that the technical skills that they do is really, is good. So I've seen many, through my research, I've seen many organizations where they say, okay, I've trained web developers, but the program's only 1 month long. So I want to ensure that the training that's provided is of the quality which is required to make them successful in the workforce. So the technical training has got to be good. So whilst I know what our soft skills training is like, and I know it's good, I need to ensure that the partner that we work with, where the learners come from, where they've had their digital skills training, whatever it is up to industry standards. Because otherwise, yes, you can say, yes, we have links to jobs, but we don't have links to jobs for people who haven't been trained up to industry standards. And we're really cautious about our partners to making sure that whatever training they do, the learners have got to be able to have the skills to be successful. We're really, really cautious about that.
So Noreen, I think from Pakistan, has a question. I think I forgot which part of Pakistan she's in, but indicated they're in a remote part of Pakistan and they want to create greater opportunities for remote work. So a question kind of that comes from Noreen, and also in general. So one is for organizations that are working around this. Do you have any? I mean, this is a much longer question, so I'm not trying to challenge you, but do you have any suggestions if you're thinking about trying to upskill or help others develop capacity to get remote work? Here's like 2 or 3 things like to think about doing, and 2 or 3 things that don't work. And then for individuals who, whether in a capital city or they're somewhere rural, who have a digital connection and they're looking for remote work, where do you recommend they go? Is it Fiverr or those places? And where can they find decent work without being exploited? Because there is a lot of remote work which is just a race to the bottom. Like whoever is the cheap, unless you're so highly skilled, sometimes you can charge good rates, but there's a lot like just a race to the bottom, and it's not a living wage.
So we've been having lots of discussions about platforms and doing research on platforms about this. So maybe I'll address the first question about it. Yeah. So I'm often asked this question, so it's okay. I know how to answer it. We have to look at where, what background the learners, the potential learners are from. So I sort of have a couple of things, and I've sort of, taken this from a friend: 0 to somewhere to a job. To get someone from 0 to a job is really hard. Not impossible, but really, 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 really hard. So you have to think 0 to somewhere. What digital skills does the learners have? Remote work isn't easy. Remote work is not for everyone. So when we do our programs, we don't recruit everyone. We have rigorous recruitment criteria. They have to have a almost fluent level of English. They have to have some skills. So in our program in Ethiopia, where they're trained to be full stack web developers, they have to start the program with already a decent level of technical skills. So in that program, a lot of our learners were already graduates, and then topping up, from their degree. So, and then same in Kenya, everyone had been through a technical skills training program. Everyone spoke really fluent English, but also we have to make sure that we aren't setting people up for failure by saying, yes, we'll train you for 2 months and you'll find a remote job, because it's not easy. We have to really understand where the learners are coming from and where we want them to be. And also looking at the competition. Do you want them to work globally? Do you want them to work in the community? And remember, there's a lot can be done within the community in which they live. The platforms are great, but it all goes by recommendations. It takes the hardest thing is to get the first job on Upwork, on Fiverr. The hardest thing is to get the first job. When you get the first job, then it's slightly easier because clients go by recommendations. They want to see how much work you've done. They want to see what people have said about you. So the first one is the hardest one. And this is why we're setting up an agency on Upwork so that we can sort of scaffold that for a lot of the learners. So they don't have to think, I don't know how to navigate this. Upwork is hard because there's so many, there's a multitude of projects and clients. And I think a lot of the platforms set a minimum rate. So you can't have a project less than $15. You can't have a project less than this amount of money. So they set a minimum rate. So whilst it is perceived to be a race to the bottom, I do think that, some clients go by reviews as opposed to price sometimes. So that's what I understand in my conversations. And on the other end of this spectrum of work, well, on a different end of the spectrum, there's the generative AI micro work. And I think when we think of the race to the bottom, this is what we think about. And often these prices are set by clients, not by the platforms doing the work for the clients. So perhaps it's a matter of how do we create an ethical value chain? And I'm sort of stealing from a friend of mine on something that I moderated yesterday for the ILO. How do we create an ethical AI value chain where the work that is being given from the clients to the platforms provide slightly better pay for the workers doing the work. But I guess the good thing about it, about this micro work is there's a lot of work, and it means that there's a way for people to earn money whilst they're doing other things. So for us, micro work is just is a way to enter the space and to do something at the side. It's not a career, but it's a side gig.
Wonderful. So a lot of people are asking from Pakistan and Uganda and other places, how do they get in touch with you in terms of they want, obviously you don't want to be overwhelmed, but if someone in Uganda is working in the tech sector with migrants or refugees, so what is the best way to get in contact with you without being overwhelmed? Like, you have a form, or like, how do people engage with Namal?
So on our website, we've got a contact us form. I mean, I saw someone ask, how can we get this training? I mean, we have to, like my team have to be paid. So we can't just say, oh, my team will work for you, because I have to pay my team to do the work. And it's a lot of work to make sure, because we do everything to the highest quality. Perhaps we're a team of perfectionists, but we believe that refugees deserve this. So I have to pay my team. We have to get paid. So the projects need to be funded. So yes, we're happy to work with anyone, but we have to make sure that the learners that we're training have the potential to work. So we have to make sure that the training, either in collaboration with us, the digital skills training, or the learners that we take after the training, is good enough to meet industry standards. And if it's not, we're not the partner for you. We want to make sure that the people we're working with have the skills. We don't want to disappoint anyone.
Okay. So if you would like to get in contact, go to Namal's website, click on contact, and make sure you provide some details. Don't just say I want to work with you.
Yes.
Lama, with Refugees on Rails, and we were able to guarantee internships with Amazon Germany post 3 months. So she's recommending really connecting with tech partners.
Yes, so that's what we do. So the problem with a lot of the countries is a lot of these companies in Europe, our learners aren't in the global north, so we did have a relationship with Amazon, and they wanted some sort of physical presence. At that time, we spoke to them, and this is problematic for the people we work with. Are they going to send them to Germany for 3 months and then send them back to Ethiopia or to Kenya? I mean, yeah. So all of these things we think about, which is why we really promote remote work. And sometimes even big companies are reticent to have big groups of people which under their control working remotely, not on site, which is why we're building this sort of outsourcing method. So yes, Amazon will hopefully outsource work to us. So they won't be working for Amazon, but they'll be doing outsourced projects from Amazon. That's the idea, because then they get the experience, and then companies, it's less of a risk for companies initially with junior talent.
So just one quick question. So if someone listens to this today or in the future, and they do work for a nonprofit or a tech company or a foundation that has a discrete project, is the agency up already in terms of, or it's coming, and that,
Ready.
what's this,
We're
what's
ready. Come
what's
on.
like, what's the scope of the project? It could be anything from a half a day of research to like a 6-month development project, or like what's the range of things that?
Yes. I mean, obviously a small project, I mean, it has to be worth our while because it costs us the same for our team. If it's a 1 hour project, I mean, it perhaps not so viable for us. Go to Upwork if it's a small project, not to us. But certainly a longer project where you need a amount of people, anything around tech development. We work with an organization called Equal Reach, as I said, and they are our partner, the agency partner, who deal with the clients, and then our teams of refugees will and host community will do the work with a team leader. So right now, one of our team leaders is a refugee. He's been working with us for over a year, I say. He's on our advisory board. He's an Eritrean refugee in Ethiopia. He's been part of our team for a long time. And he'll be one of the tech leads, and our other tech lead is not a refugee, but also from the continent, from Africa. So when we work with clients, we guarantee that that our leads are experienced, and the work which they get delivered will be of the best quality. For us, the fact that the team of refugees, it doesn't diminish the quality of the work that the client should expect.
And then if someone has a project, do they go to your website, or where do they go to start exploring if you might be a fit?
Yeah, so they can come to our website, and then we'll direct them, to the right people within our team. Okay. And the partner, because we work on this together. So yes, come through our website, connect with me on LinkedIn, and also we're looking for people to mentor. Mentorship is hugely important. We're looking for companies who want to engage a lot of their employees as mentors, because the mentoring, they actually, when companies do CSR, often it's handing money over and there is no engagement from the employees. With mentoring, the employees actually invest in the people that and in the nonprofit that the company is supporting. So we have a great partner in Cambridge called ARM and Appen, who have mentors, and the employees work directly with the learners, with our talent.
So for those, whether it's a company or nonprofit or individual, what's the general commitment for mentorship? So is it like X number of hours per week or months?
Yeah. So normally it's 5 to 6 months mentoring, 1 hour every other week. So 2 hours a month. And we have some training. We have some check-ins to ensure that everyone's on track. People are on track. So 5 to 6 months. Oh, thank you, Lama. I would love to have you as a mentor. 5 to 6 months. And every other week. And we have a full set of robust resources for the mentors. We have a mentorship guide going through all the topics with activities and prompts and resources and sort of homework to give to the mentee. So quite a robust program with training as well at the beginning.
Okay. And then in terms of the model, is it a for-profit, nonprofit, B Corp? Like what's, and then can you talk a little bit about helping to launch something, like whether people are thinking about launching their own nonprofit, for-profit, like the wonders of building your own thing, and also the not horrifying is not the right aspect, but the significant stressors.
It is horrifying. So we're a company and a nonprofit because some grants partners want a particular registration, so we have both. It's hard, it's painful. I'm not sure if I would recommend this to anyone. It was really, really tough at the beginning. And sometimes it's still tough. Sometimes I'm up at 5:30 in the morning because my team are all over the world. Like, okay, how many messages do I have to reply to before I even get out of bed? Before I sort of make sure my kids are up in the morning. It is the most rewarding, but the hardest thing ever. But when we have I can't tell you, it makes me cry sometimes when we see our talent go on to do amazing things. I mean, the refugee who's on our team, he's one of our alumni. So we want to hire our alumni, and I'm so proud that he's part of our team. Like, our team loves him. He's amazing. And we want, to be in a situation where our alumni become part of our team. That's the goal, right? We're training all these amazing people. And for us, this is sort of proof to the pudding, saying to all our partners, we're hiring our alumni. Surely the fact that we can and we have really high standards means that our alumni are worth you also hiring.
In terms of being a, let's say, distributed team remote, can you share a little bit, whether it's full-time or consultants, about how many countries or how big is the team? And then like just in terms of your tech stack, what do you use? Like, what are your most popular tools for staying engaged?
Oh my gosh. Well, now you'll come with all the technical questions, Craig. Oh my gosh. So the team, there are 8 of us, probably 7 countries. But a couple of some digital nomads, which is of course what we encourage. We have someone based in Ethiopia who's our Ethiopia person is a refugee, so he's based in Addis, but he's migrating soon to Canada. We have someone based in Nairobi who's Kenyan. We have someone in the US, a researcher also in the US, who sort of does a bit of part-time, but she's doing a PhD based on our research. Someone in Thailand, Abu Dhabi. I'm in the UK, so really are globally distributed. And the great thing is everyone has this, we all navigate each other's time. So the person in Abu Dhabi often has late calls, while the person in the US has early calls to navigate the time difference between the two. And I think that's what's amazing about our team. We have this amazing flexibility and everyone just gets stuff done. And for me, I can't praise my team highly enough, because what we do is we just get stuff done, make things happen. And really, I think the team have really moved mountains, done miracles to achieve what we have. We don't have a huge team. It's a small team. We really could do with more, but we need more funding to do more. But like everyone works really hard, but everyone enjoys the work. And that's the atmosphere I want to create. I want people to love what they do, but also I don't want them to see it as just a salary which we're creating. Like, we're really changing lives. And I say to my team all the time, we are changing the world. We want to change the world. Our goal is to change the world. And that's what we're doing. And everyone really holds that close to their heart, the fact that we're changing lives, we're changing the world.
Wonderful. So we're going to start wrapping up in a few minutes. So Giselle is just saying, if anybody wants to submit a digital project to them all, go to equalreach.io. We'll include this in the show notes.
Amazing. Great.
Faith from the African Leadership Academy is just saying she works there, is interested in collaborating. So again, if you're interested in collaborating, please get in contact with them. Someone else asked again, I think, I forgot the person's name, apologies. But again, I think we've answered this one, but just a reminder. So if someone is, let's say, from a displaced background, so right now, if they want to participate, do they have to go through a partner organization? Like, is there a pathway for someone who's like in Thailand, displaced from Myanmar? Like, how do people get into your pipeline?
So normally our programs are country specific, normally. But right now we've got a new program that's global. This is our World Bank research. So it's a randomized controlled trial. So we're recruiting globally for that. Maybe I'll send you the application form after to put in the show notes, because this is the one program, and perhaps hopefully it wouldn't be the only time that we have the capacity to have a globally distributed number of learners, and a large number, because with our MIT program, with that collaboration, that's a global cohort, but the cohorts are small, 50 to 100 this year, but that's out of 2,000 that applied. But this program, because it's a research project, we have the capacity to do a lot more. However, it's not our full program. So just know that we don't have the intense support that we normally do on a traditional program that's country specific, but you'll have access to our content, access to us, and because it's a randomized control trial, one treatment group will have mentors. So you will have the opportunity to work with a mentor to help guide you. So that is the one program which will start. Well, the applications are open now, and it will be launched Q1 2024.
Okay.
That's the opportunity for refugees globally with the skills. You need to have the skills, because we don't do it in digital skills training. You have to have the digital skills. You need to have a device. You need to have connectivity, because it's such a large number. We don't have the capacity to sort of support with that. With our program in Kenya, we support with connectivity and with devices. But on this larger one, you need that needs to be what you have in order to succeed in the program.
Okay. Yeah. So if you're open to sharing that, we'll put it in the show notes.
I will share that.
the last three questions as we wrap up. And again, apologies for the technical challenges in the beginning. Doesn't usually happen. So in your current, when you have time, what are you currently working on upskilling yourself? So are you working on generative AI? Are you working on digital platforms? Like the best, or if you don't have time, what are you hoping to upskill on yourself?
Yeah, so right now I'm actually doing research. I'm doing a couple of research projects. One about emerging practices for digital livelihoods, which it should hopefully be launched early next year, and then another one about the platform economy. And I continue to do research. So, but I do one thing that when I do get the time, initially I used to say I want to learn to code. I've given up. Like, not for me. I'm a social scientist. But generative AI is one thing that I really want to get a better grasp at, because this is the future. So yeah, so that's one thing. But also, I mean, I'm a social scientist, so when I follow politics a lot. I've been going to protests every weekend. So really following the sort of changing political nature of the world and understand, reading a bit of history, because history really links to why political structures exist as they do now. So I guess my upskilling isn't always in the tech space, even though that's the space I occupy with our learners. But I really want to understand a lot more about the places that our learners come from, about the conflicts in which have caused their displacement. And again, because I lived in the Middle East, my focus was the Middle East for a very long time. I'm just learning about Africa now. So I mean, I only this year I went to Kenya for the first time. I've been twice this year so far. I haven't been to Ethiopia yet, but really understanding the context, because I feel by understanding the history of a people I really understand, I get a better understanding of how we can help them, what they need from us.
And then, unrelated to professional, is there a book or a show or a movie that you've seen that has nothing to do with like professional things in the world, but just has sparked your imagination or just purely fun that you might recommend to others you've seen recently or read?
So there's a book called The Culture Map by Erin Myers, and I actually buy that for my team. When I meet one of my team in person, that's a book I give to them, Culture Map, because this talks about, because all of our team are from different countries. Yes, that's it. Fantastic book. And so many times, and especially if you've lived in different countries, lived in different contexts. I've lived in different countries. I lived in Asia, the Middle East, Europe, the Caribbean. I have ethnic heritage from different places. So for me, reading this book, I thought, wow, it really made me understand more about myself, but also how to navigate working with my teams, but also having lived in contexts which weren't necessarily, living in the Middle East and lived in Taiwan. Completely different culture, even though my grandmother's father was Chinese. So that was very different, having that as when I was a child, to living in Taiwan and then living in the Middle East, understanding how people navigate the world and navigating work. When I read this book, I thought, I was like, oh my God, someone is writing what the questions that I had that I wanted to understand.
Okay. And then just last question, does Namal put out a monthly newsletter? And obviously, yes. please go to the website, but like, is it subscribing or?
Yeah, so we have a month newsletter every 2 months, because a lot of work, we have a lot to do. But follow us on LinkedIn. We share everything on LinkedIn, all of our activities. We've got an amazing, my team are amazing comms person. I love everyone on the team. And yeah, follow us on LinkedIn and Instagram. I mean, LinkedIn is I kind of look at Instagram, but LinkedIn is really where I post a lot. I reshare a lot of the content from the NAML page. Our impact report was out last month, I think. So that's also on LinkedIn. So yeah, LinkedIn is the best place to follow what we're up to. We post regularly. We have updates about our learners. We have call out for when we look for mentors, we have call out there. We'll be looking for mentors soon. So we'll post everything on our LinkedIn. So please follow us, and please feel free to send me a message on LinkedIn, connect with me. It might take me a couple of days, but I will get back to everyone eventually. But yeah, and then come to our contact form on LinkedIn and on our website. If you have a specific request about partnering or anything around our programs.
Yes. And just as someone who gets a lot of messages too. Like, please, if you're going to ask for a partnership, please provide some context,
Yes.
because like don't write a book, but just a lot of people like help, and that like you've got to provide some context if you
Yes.
want to get a response.
Yeah, indeed. Because I need to know, because we have multiple things, multiple priorities, multiple things. And, as I say to everyone, my number one priority is my children, and then Namo.
Yeah, we have a crazy 12-year-old, so we spend a lot of time at football games all the time.
Yeah, I have two teenage boys, 19 and 16. I spend a lot of time freezing at the side of the rugby pitch.
Yes. Okay. Well, ours is a very competitive football players, a little less violent than rugby, but they're both competitive sports. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and energy, and sharing also your journey. And just as we started off with, again, apologies for the tech challenges. That'll be edited out in the podcast edition, which will be up on Friday. Please, the three things: please follow Lorraine, Namal, and PCDN. Please share this general podcast. Check out the other 120 episodes, which you can find at PCDN Global. You can search by sector. So we have all different sectors, from impact investing to tech for social change to working humanitarian relief. And if you rate the podcast, it just helps us grow our reach. And stay tuned if your organization is interested in partnering with them all, get in touch with them. And also, if you are potentially interested in being a mentor, check out the call for mentors. Hopefully, we'll share the call for the global applicant pool, which is more a randomized control trial, but there'll still be opportunity for robust support. And if you're an organization that needs digital services, then please get in touch with them, because that's obviously one of the best ways to help people get employment and generate a better livelihood. So thank you so much, Lorraine. And I forgot to say you're joining us from Edinburgh, one of the best cities in the UK. I'm in Medellin, Colombia. And thank you, everyone, for participating. Have a wonderful day, and we're going to end here.
Thank you, everyone.